Welcome back from a vacation. And what is a vacation? But a series of unexpected events. Sometimes interruptions. What do you do when you forget the luggage on the carousel? And it's your kid's luggage. So how do you deal with these kinds of things? How do you find your center? You know, I always thought my center was something that would give me what I wanted. And divine order is getting everything the way I want it so it's really smooth. And you know, sometimes it is. And sometimes it isn't, because it's a double thread, because we have to deal with both the positive and the negative, and the good and the bad, and the easy and the difficult, and all of these things reveal to us the self that we are. I am revealed as the self that I am. Together? I am revealed as the self that I am. And sometimes it takes those two sides in order for that to take place. You know, Walter Starkey was a writer who wrote many books, and one of his books was called The Double Thread, and it was about this very thing. How many of you read Walter Starkey's books? Anybody? Walter Starkey was a great writer. He was a student of Joel Goldsmith. Now, you may have heard of him. Anybody heard of Goldsmith? And he was Goldsmith's primary student. Goldsmith, though, was an absolutist. He always talked about the spiritual, the spiritual, the spiritual, and there wasn't a lot of process to what he wrote about. It was all the ineffable spiritual. So when Walter Starkey went through Goldsmith's papers after Goldsmith died, he was the person who was taking care of his estate. He noticed all of his journals, because Goldsmith, unlike me, I always burn my negative journals and all the stuff that I'm going through, or throw it away. But Goldsmith kept it all. And so Walter Starkey is reading about all of Goldsmith's inner upheaval, all of his negative emotions, all of the things that he was processing on his path to the ineffably spiritual that he wrote about. And so Walter Starkey had a spiritual crisis and actually walked away from the spiritual path for many, many years until it came to him that there was a double thread. It came to him as a picture in meditation. He read about the DNA helix, you know, the double thread of the DNA. Well, how there is, it takes both. It takes both the positive and the negative. Jesus said you have to be wise as a serpent, but gentle as a dove. He often talked about this, about the need for balance. You have to be as wise as the people of the world, and you have to take care of business. You know, Sally in Peanuts comic strip, she's saying to Charlie Brown, "Charlie Brown, I'm mad at everything right now." And Charlie Brown said, "I thought you had inner peace." And she said, "Yes, but I also have outer obnoxiousness." You have to let those feelings out in a responsible way, in a balanced way. It's a balance point. You have to let those things out in a positive way. You don't put a lid on these things, but you have a constructive, like writing it down on paper, like Walter Starkey noticed that Goldsmith did. And I kind of regret that Goldsmith didn't write more about the processing, but perhaps that wasn't his job. But Walter Starkey made it his life's work for the rest of his life to write book after book after book about how ineffably spiritual everything is, and how the road there includes processing and releasing all of the things that are unlike that spirituality and honoring that human part of ourselves. Joan Borisenko, when she was the head of the Harvard University Medical School Holistic Health Center, she said that there was only one negative emotion. Only one negative emotion. And that was the negative emotion that was unacknowledged and that you subconsciously marinated in. So if you unacknowledge, and she also said that they did studies of the immune system chemicals in the body, and they found twice as strong an immune system on people who were cancer patients, who were in support groups where they could give voice to their emotions and get honest and get real about their feelings. Twice as strong an immune system. What is that? Well, it's talking about the need for balance. You know, all these things are interrelated. They found out that your gut microbes determine what's going on in your emotions, and they find out that your meditation determines your mind, and all these levels of being are interrelated. There's a model for that. I was going to draw it up here, but my guidance was I wasn't supposed to do that, so I followed it today. But the model is called the quadrinity. And it isn't that we're equally all four of these, but we should seek to find balance in all four of these. And it's just imagine a circle, and imagine a cross like this in the circle, And there's 4 quadrants, and the first one is physical. You got to take care of your physical being. You know, when I was in college, all the guys in my rock band knew this guy who they thought was really spiritual. Oh, he meditated all the time. He didn't have a job. He didn't have a car. He didn't brush his teeth. He didn't bathe. He didn't take care of the physical. That is not spirituality. You have to take care of all 4 of the quadrants. So there's the physical. What do you think the second quadrant is? Emotional. It's the emotional self. You've got to be real and honest. And we talked about that. Letting those feelings out. Journaling them out. Taking the problems of the 7 steps. Writing out the negative emotions and what's behind them. Getting in touch with those things and letting them go. Not staying stuck in them. It's a matter of balance. You don't overexpress and you don't underexpress. Now for most of us in Unity, we tend to maybe push that down a little bit. I've often shared about after my dad died, it was a year later that I finally got around to grieving it. And it took I-70 in Kansas, which was like a hypnosis. And I was going along, you know, after about 3 hours of it, a song came on my tape deck that was written about the death of the father of the Grateful Dead's bass player. And I went, oh, it was his father who died. And then immediately I let it go for the next 2 hours. Thank goodness it was Interstate 70, because all I had to do is just do this, right? But I let all that out. I let all that out. So we in Unity often don't acknowledge or allow ourselves to experience these things. And the healing presence that dwells within us requires us to do whatever is necessary to move us into that higher presence, into that higher self, into that higher awareness. And you can't just put a lid on it and pretend like it's not happening. You know, what is that? The Unity minister who in the afterlife goes, "It is not hell and I am not hot." You know, no, don't take that seriously. That could freak some people out, couldn't it? No, not intended. So there's the second quadrant, which is the emotional. The third one is the mental, and that's where most of us in Unity tend to live. It's the mental, but we can get overbalanced in the mental. You know, where we think everything is our concepts and our thinking and our structure and all of our ideas, and we get stuck in our ideas, and our ideas have ideas, and they have ideas. And you know, I've often shared about the story of the Hindu monks who were very high level. They were Hindu priests, and they were walking along a road, and there was a poor Hindu beggar by the side of the road who was attempting, in order to, you know, beg, he was chanting some ancient Sanskrit chant, and of course he was uneducated, so he did it all wrong, and of course they weren't going to give him any money or pay any attention to him, but one of them decided, oh, I'm going to do him a favor, and he turns around, it's just a moment, and he goes to the man, and he corrects his pronunciation. He says, no, you have it all wrong, my good man, let me do it correctly for you, and he teaches it to him, and he gives him the correct pronunciation, and they go on along. Of course they didn't leave any money, and they get down to the ferry boat. And they're crossing on the ferry boat, and they hear a splash behind them, and it's the man running on the water, on the top of the water, saying, excuse me, but could you please give me that pronunciation again? I don't think I quite got it. Meaning, it isn't about our concepts. It isn't about our structures. Life is a dance. Life is a dance. Life is a dance. Together, life is a dance. And you know, there's a give and a take. There's a back and a forth. You know, when Lynn and I, 15 years ago, our meditation teacher, Jane Elizabeth Hart, said to us as a spiritual discipline that we would have to take ballroom dancing lessons. And let me tell you, it was an adventure because all my stuff came up. And I mean, you know, I'm not exactly, I mean, I grew up in the era where dancing was just whatever. You just twirled and did whatever. Structured dancing, I had to be aware of my balance. And, you know, me, it was like 1, 2, cha, cha, cha. You know, I actually had people walk up to me and say, are you doing okay? You don't look like you're having a very good time out there. You know, so mental, so cognitive. But it was so healing for us and so powerful for us. But life is a dance. And being on the mental level means not overbalancing, because that's where we are in our lives. Jesus talked about this once. This is found in the writings of several of the early church fathers, although it's not found in the Bible, so many scholars think it's accurate. And it's a quote. It's called The Dance of Jesus. And let me just read it to you. I am the Word who is playing and dancing everything into being. Now respond to my dancing. Understand what I am doing by dancing yourself. The one who won't dance can never understand what I am doing. I am playing my flute now, so all of you start dancing. Every one of you, your true nature is to dance. So come on, start dancing. Think about that. I mean, dancing. I mean, how many religions outlaw dancing? But if you look around the world, every world religion, that's why the dervishes whirl, and why the Quakers quake and the Shakers shake. And people are trying to find their balance, and they're doing through the balancing of dancing or the balancing of physical movement. I mean, why not? We have to find that balance. If you think about the double thread going back and forth, Jesus said, be wise as a serpent, as gentle as a dove. What's found in the middle of the thread? That point of silence. That point of silence is in you. That point of poise, of balance. And it isn't found by rigidly adhering to a mental, rigid construct of what we think is spiritual. That's just my idea of what is spiritual. I've got rigid ideas of what is spiritual. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be disciplined and intentional and do your meditation every day and do these different things. But don't be rigid about anything, because everything in this life is designed to unfold your infinite nature, which is far greater than your concepts of it. My infinite nature is far greater than my concepts of it. Together? My infinite nature is far greater than my concepts of it. So what illusions on the mental level do you hold about your spiritual nature? What ideas are you holding that are holding you back? In Unity, I've noticed lately, and I'm not trying to complain too much, but I've noticed there's a real rigidity in some of the teachings that I see. You've got to think this and use this language and do this and do this. The Fillmores weren't like that. Yeah, they had teachings, but I got to tell you something. The Fillmores didn't know what the 5 basic Unity principles were. Do you know why? Because they weren't written down until the 1980s. So what is your natural spirituality? You have a natural spirituality that is yearning and longing to express. You've got to give structure to it. You've got to give discipline to it. But it's got to be part of your natural equipment. What is that spiritual nature? This was it's a wonderful quote from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and although she didn't come up with a quadrinity idea, she adhered to it, and she described it beautifully. If you let children express their natural feelings, they're not going to be so angry or so upset, unless you leave their baggage on the They will become healthy, gorgeous kids, and then as teenagers, they'll love and respect their physical bodies. They won't destroy them with alcohol or drugs. They'll act naturally emotional instead of becoming little Hitlers before they're 19. They will respect their intellectual quadrant, and they'll love to learn because learning is an adventure for them. Their spiritual quadrant will therefore open up naturally. They will get their own answers and won't have to go from guru to medium to channeler to everyone but themselves. They won't have to shop around for love either. So all of these things in the outer world are resources, but they don't get hung up on it. And what happens? It flowers naturally. You are the natural flowering of your spiritual nature, but it only happens when you attend to and give balance to your physical, your emotional, and your mental, as well as your spiritual quadrants. These are the pairs of opposites. Gandhi talked about it. He said we have to be both loving and strong. He called it ahimsa satyagraha, which was harmlessness, truth muscle, literally, but it was love and strength. And he said that his work was a balance of both. And there were times that you had to be very strong, and other times that you had to be very yielding. And you had to know which was which. And how do you know? Your center knows. My center already knows. Together, my center already knows. That's why during the meditation, we took a few moments to assume support. Lynn loves to use that phrase, assume support. And if you assume support, you just say, well, if I was centered, what would that be like? If I was aware of my answer, what would my answer be? You know, when somebody calls you on the phone and says, hey, I need some advice, the best thing to do is ask them, what does your intuition say? You know, Jason asked me about something the other day. He said, well, Dad, what should I do about this? I said, well, what does your intuition say? Yeah, but this. Yeah, but what does your intuition say? Yeah, but this. And finally, he said, well, my intuition said, and he told me what it was, and it was what he didn't want to do. How often do you get guidance that tells you to do what you really don't want to do? Jane Elizabeth Hart calls that your second act. Now, we all have a pretty good first act. I want to be spiritual. I want to listen to God. I want my guidance. I want to live a spiritual life. But that means me getting what I want with ice cream and whipped cream and a cherry on top. But what happens when you get guidance that guides you in a direction that was unexpected, that perhaps is a part of your greeny edge that is unacknowledged, that you really don't feel comfortable in? Guaranteed your spiritual growth is that part of you that you're not comfortable with, because if it was something you were comfortable with, you would have already grown there. It's unexplored territory. And so you're going to be required to listen to and then follow through on guidance that you don't want to follow through on as part of your spiritual path. And the question is, what's your second act? My first act is to get whatever I want and to have everything my way. And I show up great in my first act. But what happens in your second act? I remember about 25 years ago, I was interviewing for a church, and I knew it was the perfect church, and everybody knew it was the perfect church. And yeah, there was another candidate, but the board knew, and there were 6 people on the board, and 5 of them said, yes, we're going to hire you. But the 6th one, even though they said he knew that I was the person that they were going to hire, that he felt that the people in the church needed another round of interviews and another round of whatevers. And although I was disappointed, I thought, well, I'm patient, I can do that. So we're going to have a little meeting now, and we're going to talk it out or whatever, but that's how it's going to go down, probably. So I went into the other room and I sat down and I started meditating. And what came to me was, if they don't come out of that meeting and offer you the position, walk away from it. I did not want to do that. You know, it was scary to me. But I finally got myself in hand and I surrendered, because I had to realize that unless what is right and it's all in order, there would not be the backup for what I was supposed to do. Well, fortunately, they just overruled that one person and went ahead, and that one person left, and everything worked out well. But I had to follow my guidance. Sometimes when you surrender to your guidance that's unpleasant and you follow it, you don't have to do it. But if you have the attitude of, oh, if I surrender, I don't have to do it, that's never going to work out. So it's a tricky thing. You know what I'm talking about. A lot of you know what I'm talking about. So what is it in your life at this time that your soul is calling you to do that perhaps you didn't want to do? Remember, I shared about Brew Joy, who had this lucrative medical practice, and he was supposed to open up a holistic health clinic. And he finally did it. He finally surrendered, but it took him going through some physical stuff. You don't have to go through that. Trust your guidance. And if you say, well, I don't know what my guidance is. Yes, you do. On some level, you always do. So what is that guidance? You say, but I don't know what it is. Right, but what's the next thing? What is it if I say, what is your guidance? If you knew what your guidance was, what would it be? And 90% of the time, that's correct. And the rest of the time, you just got to journal it out and let it go. So what is your soul calling you to do? Where are you going to find your point of balance, your point of guidance? And then you can open up to it. You know, we were on our trip, and I took the kids back to the places in my life that I'd grown up. I really didn't want to go back to my college town, but my daughter wanted me to, and show her all the places that I lived in, everything. She thought it was some kind of big city where a lot of hippies lived. And it turned out to be this little farm town, so she was very disappointed. But I had it had grown a lot, but still. But one of the things that I found when I was going through my college days. I put myself through college selling brushes door to door, and I had to have a loose attitude towards my sales, what my manager called the what the hell attitude. We drove down the streets of this agricultural town and all the places where I used to sell my brushes. But my manager used to say, you need to have a what the hell attitude, and if you do, you can carry a bucket of anything down the street and people will buy it from you. Your life, your results will be better. How do you get into this spiritual dance mode? How do you get into this spiritual mode that moves you into an open space? Well, what he told us to do was not to be attached to rejection, not to be attached to what other people are thinking or saying. And Jesus called that shaking the dust off your feet. He said, if you go into a city and the people there are not welcoming to you, shake the dust off your feet and move on. Where in your life are you attached to outcomes or the opinions of others or your own rigidly held perfectionist opinions that you're holding on to that are holding you back and working you shake the dust off your feet and move into a new awareness? This is our opportunity here to do this. We can let go of all our attachments. That was why when we were leaving my house that I grew up in and I spent decades in, Rosalie said, you're not attached to that house, are you? You know, my mom's going to move out in the next few weeks. I said, no, I'm not, because I've taken it up the 7 steps. I've let go of the attachments. But letting go of attachments is the key to being able to dance with a fluidity and a passion in life. So let's take this into prayer right now and into meditation. So just open yourself up, become aware, and know that in this moment, just once again assume that all is well. And assume that you have your right answers. If I had my right answers, if I already knew what I was supposed to do, what would that be? It matters not whether you have a conscious answer. Know that the energy and the vibration of this now moment is revealing to you and bringing to you an awareness that will precipitate into your conscious mind as the days go forth. If I already knew what I'm supposed to do, what would my posture be like? How would my breathing be? If I already knew my right answer, how would my heart feel? How would it flow? If I already had my right answer, how would the world look to me, to my mind, to my eyes, my inner eyes? If I already had my right answer, what would be my experience of the energy and the vibration all around me and within me? Just rest in this for a moment. And now with gratitude, just give thanks that you have received what you need to receive. You're aware of what you need to be aware of. And with gratitude, just say, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. And now, setting aside any papers you have in your hands, just set them all aside. Let your hands be free. And take a deep breath and let it out. And again, letting go of anything that may distract you. Open your hands. Yes, you can open up to Spirit. And assume the support. Assume the spiritual support. If you found your point of poise, your point of balance, your spiritual center, how would that feel for you? And just assume that feeling. If your breathing was centered, balanced, and poised, how would you breathe? What would your posture be like? And just assume that you're already centered. If I was balanced and poised, how would I sit? What would be the feeling of the air upon my skin? What would the expression on my face, my smile, my eyes? I have this choice right here, right now. If my thoughts were centered and balanced, how would I look at things? How would I see things? If my heart were open and free and deep flowing, compassionate, kind, what would that feel like in the middle of my being? And how would I show up in the world? If my spiritual nature were in charge, my higher beingness, how would that be for me? And what would my experience be like in this moment? This now moment. The only moment there is. Rest in this moment. Peace. What is your point of poise? What is your point of balance? What is your spiritual center? It's right where you live. Accept, embrace, be this point of poise. Thank you, God, that we find our center not far away, but deep the presence within us, deep within us. And so it is.
Well, our offering statement this morning is, I give from my point of balance and I receive abundantly. Together, I give from my point of balance and I receive abundantly. And silently. And again aloud together. I give from my point of balance, and I receive abundantly. And so it is. Amen.